Good afternoon and welcome to week 3 of Educational Technology. I want to begin, as I did last week, with some feedback from the assignments. Presently, I've scored about half of them and they look really good. They're very interesting, very engaging, and I can tell that you were looking at the components of the assignment and following the rubric, because most of them actually all of them that I've graded were really good. The only suggestion that I need to reiterate is when you put a link up for me to look at your work, please make that a live link. I'm still having to copy and paste for many of your links. So if you don't know how to do that, go back into the information from week 2 and look at those directions that we posted in there. Okay, so for week 3, you have 2 discussion boards. You're reflecting on what you've been learning so far, and we would like you to respond to thinking about something new that you've learned that you hope to use with your students, and what has also been your biggest challenge. In discussion board 2, you are to watch the TED Talk by Diana Lufenberg and respond by agreeing or disagreeing with her ideas and explaining your belief on learning from mistakes and provide an example. So those are your 2 discussion boards. So as far as citations go, you would only need to put a citation in for the second one as you're citing that video. Okay, you're also asked to do some reading about the ISTE standards. These are technology standards for students developed by the International Society for Technology in Education. That's the ISTE. They've developed a list of technology skills that need to be integrated into the curriculum in order for students to demonstrate technology literacy. Excuse me. Go through and look at these. You can click on that link in there and take a look at the profiles for technology. There are 8 areas: empowered learner, digital citizen, knowledge constructor, innovative designer, computational thinker, creative communicator, global collaborator. And in each one of those, when you click on them, there are descriptors, indicators for each of those standards. So it's really nicely laid out, and you're going to use 2 of those areas for your project this week. You're going to be looking at the empowered learner and the innovative designer. So make sure that you at least take a look at the descriptors in those areas. This week, you are going to do a design project. This is going to be kind of a lengthy assignment, so I suggest you get started on it right away. You're going to design a project in which students will demonstrate their ability to locate and evaluate information using online tools, and then apply that information to create a product that answers the question or draws a conclusion. We're going to relate this project to the Understanding by Design unit. If you have not taken that course yet, I will be posting a video under announcements this week. It's a video that I made some time back. It's really a PowerPoint, and I go through and explain the stages of Understanding by Design. So also called backwards design, I think, in some of your classes. So I'm hoping that if you look at that video and then align the parts of this project, that will make sense. So you are to excuse me, look at the project guidelines and the lesson plan and incorporate those 2 ISTE standards. It's going to have an assessment rubric and a sample student project. So some of the things that we'll be looking for: integration of online resources for research and information gathering, as I stated earlier, that is aligned to ISTE standard number 3. I'm sorry, earlier I said number 1. It's standard number 3, research and information fluency. Then the second bullet says that your students will show what they know by taking that information and applying it and creating something new, using a digital tool. On the directions, it says that that is standard 1, creativity and innovation. I believe it should read a standard number 4. That's the one that deals with creativity and innovation. So your project guidelines, your assessment rubric, and your sample student project must be linked or uploaded in Blackboard. As always, that'll be due next Sunday. So again, look at that backwards design model. Look at the video or the PowerPoint that I'm going to post for you to give you some extra support in that area. The rubric for this is fairly lengthy, and I'm going to kind of break it down a little bit using that UBD. So you're going to have an objective that relates to the big idea. Think of that big idea as an essential question or an enduring understanding. If you are using any of the newer adoptions in curriculum, you might find essential questions already in your curriculum. Also, your objective needs to be measurable, and that will turn up in your stage 3 in your rubric. You also want to have some kind of a descriptor, like 90% of your students will be able to complete the project as measured by the student project itself, something along those lines. Everything needs to be aligned to the lesson assessment. Assessment in backwards design, or UBD, is stage 2, and you really want to create your stage 2 after you've decided what your big idea is and what your standards are. So the big idea, the enduring understanding, essential question, however you want to use that, and your standards would be stage 1 of the UBD. Your stage 2 is going to be your assessment. You want to plan your assessment before you plan the activities. I don't know how much you've been taught about this, but don't plan your activities before you plan your assessment, because you need to know before you start delivering lessons what it is that you want your kids to understand and be able to do. As I just said, all of your key standards and practices are aligned. Those will come from stage 1. The detailed list of materials and resources, the procedures and instructions, everything that you're going to do with your students would be considered stage 3 of the backwards design. Also, as you look at your rubric, it's asking for evidence of effective use of technology. It's asking that you are doing your stage 3 delivery of instruction sequentially, that the procedures and instructions are clear, that you're doing frequent checks for understanding. So all of that, those are formative assessments. Those can be things like take it out the door. It could be a hand signal, thumbs up. It could be oral responses. It could be a quick journal write. It could be just observing your students, teacher observation. So those checks for understanding don't have to be paper or pencil. They don't need to be quizzes or anything that that formal. You also need to make sure that you're providing sufficient examples for your students as you're teaching this in that stage 3, and that you're offering multi-sensory supports. So depending on what your activity or what your project is going to be and what you're teaching, you're giving students opportunities to learn visually, auditorily, kinesthetically, those kinds of things. In your assessment piece, it's going to include all the homework and all the worksheets that you're going to use. And you are also going to create a student sample so that you have something that your students can see before they're asked to do it. I would actually rough out my lesson plan and create that student sample as I go so that you can have a good feeling about the process of this. If you use a project that you've already done in the past, please, please, please make sure that it aligns to the rubric. Remember that everything I grade comes from the rubric, so make sure that you have met all that criteria there. Also on the website this week are some resources to explore. One of those resources is Rubistar. If you have never created a rubric before, or you're not sure about how to create it, I would encourage you to take a look at that website. I would also strongly recommend that you create a 4-point rubric, because a 3-point or a 5-point rubric generally allows us to default to that middle if we're not sure where a student falls. But a 4-point rubric really makes us examine the student work and decide, is it meeting grade level expectations or is it right below grade level expectations. Also on those resources for this week is a video, an 11-minute video by Sir Kenneth Robinson. I'm sure you've seen him before. We tend to use his videos quite often. And this one is called Changing Educational Paradigms. So that might give you some insight too into how you want to structure this, or what kinds of experiences you want to provide for your students. So that is really all I have to tell you today. Just a reminder that I'll post that PowerPoint with my narration on it that will give you some idea about what the backwards design or the understanding design process is. It's a little clearer than how it was laid out in the online courses. I've taught that course a number of times, and I made that video so that I could be clearer with my students as to what the expectations are. So go ahead and take a look at those, get started on your project, and I will look forward to reading those next weekend. Have a great week, and I will talk to you then.